Now we came here because she's also here.
Of course.
Imagine walking into the Design Center Linz.
Imagine walking into the Design Center Linz. 28 players on the entry list, 2 former champions lurking in the draw, indoor red clay beneath your feet for the first time in 2026, and a knowing that 115 million people back home expect you to make every single point count. That is Alex Eala's reality in 5 days. The crowd goes wild before she even steps on court because the WTA 500 Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open does not just feature defending champion Ekaterina Alexandrova and past champion Jelena Ostapenko. It features the 20-year-old Filipino projected as the number 7 seed who has never played a clay match this season. And what she posted from Mallorca this week tells you exactly how she plans to handle it. 7 days ago, Eala was still processing the end of her Miami run, a campaign that pushed her to a career-high ranking and announced her as a legitimate force on the WTA Tour. Now, fresh training reels from the Rafa Nadal Academy show her locked into 14-ball rallies on the same indoor red clay surface she will compete on in Linz. The transition from hard court heartbreak to clay court preparation took less than a week. And the field waiting for her in Austria has no interest in letting a surface newcomer settle in comfortably. The 2026 Linz draw reads like a gauntlet designed to test every fiber of a young player's composure. Ekaterina Alexandrova, world number 13, the defending champion, returns to the tournament she dominated 12 months ago armed with an intimate understanding of these exact courts. Jelena Ostapenko, ranked 23 and the 2017 Linz champion, brings the kind of explosive, high-variance power game that can shred an opponent's rhythm before the first set is over. Emma Raducanu was initially listed among the seeds, creating breathless hype about a generational clash until her confirmed withdrawal today due to ongoing recovery from a viral illness removed that particular storyline from the equation. But Raducanu's absence does not soften this field. It simply removes one headline and leaves the substance untouched. 2 former champions on a surface they have conquered before, a 28-player draw filled with experienced clay court operators, and at the center of it all, a projected 7th seed whose last competitive match on any surface ended in a scoreline she would rather forget. This is not a warm-up event. This is a WTA 500 where ranking points carry real weight, where the draw ceremony on April 5th could place Eala directly in the path of a former champion as early as the second round, and where the surface itself becomes its own opponent. The entry list confirms what analysts have been flagging since mid-March. This is one of the most loaded WTA 500 fields of the spring clay season. Alexandrova sits atop the draw as the top seed and defending champion. Ostapenko occupies a seeded position with a title already etched into Linz history. Eala, projected as the number 7 seed despite her current ranking of 45, enters a bracket where any path to the quarterfinals likely runs through a player with deep clay pedigree. The tournament structure means there is nowhere to hide. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the women who have to face her. Alexandrova and Ostapenko have experience and surface mastery on their side, but neither of them carries an entire nation into every match. Neither of them has training footage circulating across Filipino media this week, dissected frame by millions of fans searching for signs that their champion is ready. Neither of them knows what it feels like to have ABS-CBN, One Sports, and the Manila Bulletin tracking every practice session as if it were a quarterfinal. The preparation itself tells a story of intent. Verified footage from the Rafa Nadal Academy this week shows Eala drilling on indoor red clay, the identical surface she will compete on in Linz. The rallies are long, physical, deliberate. She is not guessing at what clay demands. She is engineering her adjustment in real time on the same type of court under the guidance of an academy that has produced some of the greatest clay court tennis ever played. This is targeted surgical preparation for a specific challenge. Monday, recovering from Miami. Wednesday, full clay sessions in Mallorca. Sunday, the draw ceremony in Linz. The timeline of her transition compresses weeks of normal surface adjustment into days, and that compression is a choice, a statement. Filipino social media captured the urgency of this moment before any analyst did. In the last week alone, hashtags including Pinoy Pride and Alex Eala surged across X and Instagram with posts from major Philippine outlets declaring clay, as in loading, and calling on fans to flood comment sections with support. The energy is not casual. It is organized. I'm passionate and rooted in something deeper than fandom. Every Filipino tennis fan watching these training reels understands that this is not just about Linz. This is about proving that the hard-court breakout was not a fluke, that the young woman who beat Coco Gauff and pushed deep into WTA 1000 draws can do it on clay, too. And here is what makes this anticipation feel earned rather than premature. The pattern is already visible. First came the WTA 125 titles, then the WTA 250 breakthroughs, then the WTA 1000 deep runs at Indian Wells and Miami, including victories over top 20 opponents. Each level arrived faster than the last. Each surface transition from juniors to pros, from smaller events to premier tournaments, followed the same arced out preparation execution. Linz is the next data point in a trajectory that has consistently rewarded those who believed early. You, the fans who have tracked every match, shared every highlight, and defended her potential in comment sections filled with skeptics, you recognized this pattern before the rankings confirmed it. The entry list at Linz is the WTA acknowledging what you already knew. Alex Eala belongs in these fields. The WTA's own tournament coverage framed this entry list with unmistakable clarity. Past champions Alexandrova, Ostapenko lead Linz field, Eala to make debut. That phrasing, as placing a 20-year-old's debut alongside the names of proven champions, is not accidental. The WTA's editorial team selects which names to feature in event previews based on drawing power, narrative significance, and audience demand. Eala's inclusion in that headline alongside players with Grand Slam titles and years of clay court dominance reflects a calculation about who moves the needle for global viewership. The governing body of women's tennis is telling you in its own language that this young Filipino star is now a headliner, not a curiosity, not a developmental prospect, but a name that sells tournaments. When the institution that runs the sport elevates you into the same sentence as defending champions, the debate about whether you belong shifts permanently. Linz does not exist in isolation. It sits at the mouth of the European clay court corridor, the stretch of tournaments that funnels directly into Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome, and ultimately Roland Garros. Every point Eala earns on the red clay of Austria feeds into her ranking heading into the most prestigious clay swing in the sport. A quarterfinal appearance in Linz could stabilize her inside the top 40. A semi-final could push her back toward the career-high territory she occupied just 2 weeks ago. The significance extends beyond ranking math. Over 115 million Filipinos represent one of the fastest-growing tennis audiences in Asia, and they are watching this clay court debut as a referendum on whether their champion can conquer the one surface that has historically defined European tennis supremacy. Tournament directors from Stuttgart to Paris are paying attention to the viewership numbers Eala generates because those numbers translate into sponsorship value, broadcast deals, and ticket demand. The next 6 weeks, Linz through Madrid, will determine whether Eala's 2026 season is remembered as a hard-court spike or as the beginning of an all-surface ascension. The clay answers everything. 16 days ago, Eala walked off the court in Miami after a 0-6, 2-6 fourth-round loss to Karolina Plíšková. It was her heaviest defeat of the entire hard-court swing, a stark, humbling reminder that the gap between beating top 20 players and consistently competing with the elite remains real. She had entered that match riding 3 consecutive wins, including a gutsy 3-set comeback against Laura Siegemund. The loss cost her 16 ranking spots. Her response came not through excuses or silence, but through a single phrase in a post-match press setting that captured everything about who she is at 20 years old. I make it a point to always be grateful for what you have. Within days, she was back at the Nadal Academy drilling on clay, converting the sting of that loss into fuel for the next chapter. The footage from Mallorca this week is the answer to Miami, a not in words but in work. A 0-6, 2-6 loss in Miami, training reels on indoor red clay within the week, a WTA 500 entry list featuring 2 former Linz champions, an entire nation flooding social media with pride and anticipation, and at the center of it all, a 20-year-old who responded to her worst defeat of the season by saying she chooses gratitude. then showed up at one of the world's premier tennis academies to prepare for the hardest surface transition of her career. Alex Eala is not walking into Linz hoping to survive. She is walking in with the preparation, the momentum, and the national backing to make this clay court debut a statement that reverberates from Austria through Roland Garros. Can she shock Alexandrova and Ostapenko on their own surface and reach the Linz quarterfinals, or will the clay veterans prove that experience on red dirt still outweighs fearless ambition? Drop your prediction below. If you have been following Eala's rise since the early rounds, you already know how quickly her story moves. Linz starts April 6th, Stuttgart follows, Madrid is right behind it. The clay chapter is unfolding in real time, and every week brings a new test. Subscribe now because the next update from Linz could be the one that changes the entire conversation, and you do not want to hear about it secondhand.